Thanks for tuning in. I hope you are well. We are live and direct. I'm here in Defected HQ in East London on a very rainy, typical English spring day. We're very happy to have you back on board for another We Talk as One. We think this one is a particularly relevant chance for us to have a conversation because we're going to be talking about, frankly, the future of events. We're aiming to make it as practical, as progressive, and well, hopefully as positive as we possibly can. We've got a quite fantastic kind of lineup of people coming your way this afternoon. We're here for 90 minutes, being live on Twitch. That means you are genuinely a part of the conversation. So do get your questions in. I'm seeing all of your names from wherever you are already appearing, which is very lovely. We're going to ask as many of the questions as we possibly can because it's kind of about you, because it's events for you and all of us. So I'm going to start introducing our brilliant crew. I'm going to start off with Yousef. Yousef's had something of a moment recently. There he is. How are you doing, Yousef?
I'm okay, thanks, James. How are you, man?
I'm very well. Yousef is borderline celebrity these days. If you don't know, his story anyway is one of sort of resilience, of very much of positivity. Having blazed a trail for like 20 years and become something of an iconic industry figure, many of you will know that Yousef's Circus event only a week or two back now is called The First Dance, was the UK's first event since COVID, since the pandemic. It was a pretty monumental event, a monumental moment. 7 billion, something like that, it reached worldwide in terms of the news coverage. It was classed the most significant global news story since electronic music begun. I'm not saying that's a grandiose build-up, but there's a lot to live up to now for Yousef when he gigs shortly. Yousef, thank you so much for joining us. We're genuinely honoured. Welcome, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Own George Pritchard. George cut his teeth very much in the spiritual home of dance music in Ibiza. How are you, George?
I'm very well. How are you?
He's still got something of an Ibiza tan there. George learned straight proper for when he worked at the Ministry of Sound. George, there he covered talent bookings, artist agency. He is the director of events and director of talent here at Defected Records, and is a very busy boy at the moment as the world starts to open up. An awful lot to say on that matter. Third, we're very, very happy to say we've got Maria May. Maria has come fresh from another discussion straight off the bat. She's just said to me off air that she's currently sick of her own voice, so we need to make it exciting for her to come up with lots of fresh questions for you to answer. Maria, thank you for joining us, Maria.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully no one's sick of my voice, but
no. If you don't already know, Maria's actually amazingly had 25 years under her belt in this whole game, with everyone from Guetta to Frankie Knuckles to Paul Oakenfold. She sits on the board of advisors for the Association of Electronic Music, which is a vitally important trade body. She works alongside the supports the NTIA, which we probably mentioned a few times today. If you don't know, the Nighttime Industries Association, where people like Michael Kill running that is doing incredible work, frankly trying to save and maintain this nightlife and industry that we are also deeply passionate about. Maria is a part of CAA and looks after everyone from Guetta and the Black Eyed Peas to Rasheem Murphy and a whole host of other people that we haven't got time to go through today. She's also an international power player of Billboard magazine. Quite the lineup. And last but by no means least, and we're delighted he's also here in Defected HQ just over there, is Mark Newton. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark's the director at Broadwick Live. So if you don't already know, I suspect you've been to some of their venues or events, but Broadwick are focused on redefining spaces, how people actually interact with music and art and culture and recreation by breaking down those traditional barriers and delivering proper next level connection. We can certainly testify and validate that because we're very proud to be partners in Printworks London, in full-time events at Drum Sheds. Broadwick's put over 100 shows across the UK, responsible as well for Hideout Festival in Croatia, Field Day. I'm pretty sure lots of people on this stream and this conversation have been to many of these amazing events. That's the intros over, and it only took 4 minutes, so I feel quite proud of that. Let's get stuck in, everyone. And also, we've got a very lively set of questions already coming in. I'm going to start with you, Yousef. I've just joked that you're a quasi A-list Hollywood celeb at the moment because of the events of recent times. I sound facetious, but I'm not. We're all genuinely like excited, positive, and proud of the brilliant work that you've been putting on. Tell us a little bit about it, mate. Let's go back on how it started. What were the challenges? How did it go? How nervous were you, frankly?
Well, I suppose it's quite a long answer. I think obviously Maria will know, and obviously Mark as well will know that I was banging on doors from any chance I can get from like last summer, really trying to find some support for our industry, for all the people that have been left behind, including myself, like all the freelancers and people that were just not given any government support. And instead of sitting on my arse and complaining, I just got off my arse and tried my best to kind of help others, and started knocking on my local MP's door when we went to Liverpool Council, which went higher up the echelons quite quickly, and I started speaking to dropping names, a lot of kind of quite high profile dignitaries, shall we say. And things kind of spiraled from there, and I got invited to speak to and learn from the amazing Michael Kill, as you all know, our hero. And I kind of got hooked up with what we've been doing on a Monday, Maria, this like Monday club. We're all kind of trying to use our time and resources to support the industry and look at a brighter future, and make sure that if we do get in a sticky situation in the future, we're more prepared for it, and the government understands our value. So from all those kind of connections, I've been banging on the door at Liverpool Council saying, look guys, surely there's got to be some sort of event exit strategy at some point. And this was maybe 6 months ago, if not longer. And I was trying to explain that my business partner, Rich, big up Rich, and our team, Sam Newson and Eddie, our health and safety guy, are all kind of absolutely first class what they do. So if there is a sniff of any events going to happen post-COVID soon, what I call them like restart events or something, give me a shout, because we are able, prepared. We have the perfect venue for it, which is Bramley Moor Dock, which is an enormous warehouse. So ventilation isn't an issue, square footage isn't an issue, the amount of people that they needed was always fine. We could build it. So that was cool. And the conversation progressed a little bit, but then lockdown happened in December, the most recent one, which kind of stopped all these conversations dead in the water. So we didn't exactly forget about it. Every now and again, I dropped the guys a little email or a text, what's happening. And then eventually when central government and the scientists, it turns out, I discovered or learned last week, once the rate got under 1 in 500, that triggered the ability to do pilot tests in the UK. We were like, okay, now it's safe to be able to do it. That's cool. Now, with Liverpool having a history of successfully rolling out mass testing, and they were like brilliant, and it couldn't have gone any better. The government kind of said, okay, Liverpool, you've done a great job. Would you like to do some of these test events with obviously the Crucible as well in Sheffield, and then the football events in London? Do you want to get at it? So at that point, they got in touch with me and Rich and said, okay, you have a short period of time. Can you put these events together? We had 3.5 weeks from that conversation to the day it started, which even under normal circumstances is just. But
how does that compare to some of the audience who don't know? How does 3.5 weeks compare, let alone the gravitas of what you're trying to achieve?
Well,
is that an insanely short amount of time in the normal world?
Yeah. We would want at least double that, maybe longer, really, just to sell the tickets, really, not putting it together. We can build a set, because it is like building a set at Bramley Moor Dock. There's no water, there's no electricity, so it's just a shell. So we bring everything in. It's really risky, to be honest, but it's magical when it connects. So that was okay. So we had 3.5 weeks, but because of the excitement and the story, and obviously the audience appetite for the rave to be able to get out, and we were confident that people would want to come, which is important, because obviously what you might not know is that Rich and I took the risk as well. It wasn't government paid. So that's another thing. But once we started the mechanics,
sorry to interrupt you, Yousef, because that's a really fascinating point, certainly in the context of insurance, and perhaps we won't get too much into some of that today, but this is a big kind of bugbear in the industry, full stop. That is a risk for yourself, isn't it?
Well, enormously, but when you haven't worked for 40 months and your Circus was closed and your DJ business is closed and your record label is kind of hovering, you have to just get amongst it. And of course, with the kind of honor, what I felt was bestowed upon us to be able to kind of be the first in the UK, I guess we were focused on trying to help people, trying to get back to business, trying to kind of see if it's possible, all these kind of positives. I mean, we never really had time to think of the downside, really. The downside could have been significant. But the other thing as well, the dates that they gave us were just like school days. Well, one of them was like a work day. It was a Friday, so if people wanted to come, they had to take a day off work, and Saturday was fine. So we just down to it. We started booking the lineup. Sam Neeson, our production guy, started kind of building the set. Eddie and Eddie Grant started kind of building the health and safety protocols, which were much more significant than typical for obvious reasons. And then, like I mentioned off call, we have a 4:30 call every day with myself, Rich, Sam, Eddie, Lee, our leading manager from Circus, and the scientists from Liverpool University, Liverpool Council, the health and safety from there. A real mixture of total experts in what they do, all trying to kind of negotiate through these different variables that were happening on a day-to-day basis, because it wasn't like, okay, this is what you do, this is how to do it. Every day there was a new set of considerations that we had to kind of maneuver through. And I have to say that even though it was really difficult, everybody was reasonable, everyone was fair, everybody kind of understood that we had to be flexible, and it was all like, it was a spinning wheel with a moving target on it, trying to get this to happen. But we did, and unfortunately, because of the range of expertise, we were able to. And then once we got down to selling tickets, it was really interesting, because people, obviously the Saturday fired out because it was a normal day, and that was fine. And Friday took a moment to get there. So I'm just Mark saying it's a bit glitchy. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
How's it
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks. Smooth my end. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah. So we started selling the tickets, and things started going extremely well. And obviously the coverage from it was absolutely enormous. Overall, there was a little bit of resistance from the public, but in the grand scheme of things, it was genuinely a grain of sand on a beach, because like you mentioned earlier, there's like almost like 7 billion engagements around the world on it, from every major news source, from CNN to the New Yorker, to the New York Times, to I was on Bloomberg, Radio 4, the Today program. So I mentioned them specifically because they are not the usual places where I show up. But then I had to do kind of like mainstream TV every day and for weeks, and it's kind of, like you say, become this figure of it all. Unfortunately, because of an experience doing interviews over the years, I was kind of fine, I suppose, but it was a different level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
But the release of when it all came together, and we managed to open those doors on the day, even before the gig, I've never felt anything like it. It was a thing of beauty.
So there feels to me I might be wrong, there feels like there's almost 3 moments there of that moment you open your doors, when all of the hard work that you've been describing, where events meetings were with scientists. I find that a fantastically interesting nuance, by the way, and an amazingly impressive thing, that you're pulling off on a daily basis. You open the doors, that moment, probably behind the decks playing something to capture the imagination, I assume is the second, and the payoff of the love and the positivity that you probably felt in that reflective glow from the media. Were they all equally like humbling? Try and describe some of those things.
Definitely, because I opted to play the first set as well as the peak set on the first day. So I wanted to play the first record and then into the first set. So I've got this record I made quite a while ago called Welcome to the World. And it's a really beautiful, simplistic, emotional, sort of deep housey track, but it's got this like live guitar, and it's really quite playful. So for me, I've had this record on my hard drive. I made it 10 years ago, and it's been sitting there for the right moment, and that was it. So I played it for the first track, and when it was kind of parading around the room, and people were running in, like literally, they would get the ticket, get the search, and run to the dance floor, screaming, "Holy shit!" And a few people were literally bursting into tears. One girl gave me this like thank you card with this beautiful message in that I've got. And then from that moment, people relaxed instantly, and then it became real. And
Tell us
I'm
more
sure.
about that.
Go on, mate.
That's really interesting. Sorry, I was going to say, tell us more about, so the way you saw the wave of people relax. Would you say that then suddenly felt, dare I say, normal? Did it feel like waves from the past and events that you'd thrown? Because you've thrown countless incredible parties and raves and events, quite literally what you do. Did it feel then like one of those, or did it always have that lovely special kind of layer at the top, if you like?
It had a whole kind of 10 layers of special over the top, because the anticipation and almost the disbelief of the fact that it was happening, and people were able to kind of communicate physically with each other, with one another, with strangers. You know, you could hug people that you hadn't seen for a long time, and you knew all the rules were left at the door, obviously, because there's no social distancing and no masks, and all those things were, you know, it was the safest place in the UK on that weekend, no doubt about it at all. So both days were really, really special for different reasons. But for me, it was the Friday, just because getting to play the first record, seeing the first DJs, watching the range of music. You have the Blessed Madonna and JDG doing the kind of wider things, and it was just incredible. And of course, you know, there's no hiding that Ultra Nate video that's been doing the rounds. So when I kind of prepared that moment with my record with Rowetta, you know, like I've described on Tongi last week, where it was a poignant record, When Will We Be Free Again, which I released for charity, both Rowetta and I, last December, to kind of help families in need, really needy families. From that, I put in this Martin Luther King speech saying "Free at last," and then dropped it into Ultra Nate.
Amazing.
It wasn't just in front of me that was exciting. Everybody standing behind me, I'd literally burst into tears, you know, almost, because it was really, really powerful. And then when the track kicked in and the confetti went off, it felt real. You know, I can't believe that moment even happened. As in, it was like a scripted Hollywood moment. It was crazy. I suppose I am a Hollywood celebrity now, of course.
It's lucky you have. You're conveying it brilliantly. There's comments already in the streams where people, Carriswell's just writing goosebumps in uppercase, and Nick Murphy's confirming that people were crying at those clips. I'm sure you've heard that since, but it's not about that, I understand, as an adoration of you. It's about you being a part of a moment that's quite hard to describe, that you probably never anticipated, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, when I played that record, it wasn't like I'm DJing again, Circus is open again, all those things, which were part of the equation. It was, I'm seeing all my friends here. I won't go into details, but I'm having a tough time at home personally as well. And then on top of all that, the reality of what we've all experienced through COVID in the past 14 months, you know, it wasn't just about that party. It was really a nod to all these people that had suffered for all sorts of reasons, you know, not just economically, you know, obviously everything that's gone with COVID, we're not saying the D word too much. It's been awful for so many people. So it was literally like a look at a potential future, and all that responsibility seemed to kind of evaporate just for that moment.
That feeling of hope that I think a lot of people wrote, I certainly wrote that in tweets. I know people like Simon Dunmore here from Defected, the hope word was used an awful lot, and I think that means an awful lot to an awful lot of people this country. So a lot of people still just joining, and I know a lot of people around the world were in very different places. But just to recap, we're talking about this kind of ultimately the first event back, first rave back that Yousef held a couple of weeks ago, and how that's providing hope really for, I think, a lot of us, full stop, in terms of the future of events. Before we move on to another couple of people, and Yousef, we're going to come back and we're going to touch upon this for the whole conversation. Just touch upon, if you can, everything that you went through. When you're describing stuff like I had daily meetings with scientists, anyone who puts on events or works in the industry, I understand that's quite new. That's quite novel. Like, there's enough stuff on anyway, right? But the fact that we're having to suss out the science of an evening is quite hard. Is it feasible or possible, you know, moving forward for club nights, festivals, to be doing these procedures ongoing, or is this a one-off and it needs to be done entirely differently? What kind of experience have you got there that everyone can understand?
Yeah, I think that's the $64 million question, isn't it, really? You know, I've been asked that maybe 100 times for the past 2 weeks. from like all our peers texting me, what's going on, what's the story, are we going to be needing to test? And I don't know the answers by any stretch of the imagination, but what I can say is the easy part is getting your test in your local, especially in Liverpool, where there's hundreds of testing centres. It's really quite easy. Maybe not hundreds, but there's a lot. Getting your ticket, that's the easy part. Having a professional club environment where you get scanned on your ticket as normal, Mark will know. All that is normal. The difficult part, which I don't think will be able to kind of be replicated for everybody, is the 4:30 meeting crew. What I explained earlier on, everyone kind of deciding what today's rules are, because that's the way it is. There are different rules every day because this, like you say, this war that we're in is a moving target, and the ongoing strategy of war is it changes every day, and you need to kind of be nimble and prepare and agile to kind of see what the rules are today. How are we going to get into this? So, with all those things, with that considered, unless it's a blanket look, this is the blueprint. This is what we've taken from these events, and this is the situation. You're going to need testing to go in events of certain scale, then maybe. But my feeling is there won't be testing at all. It will be, look, we've come a long way. We've all behaved relatively well. We've done our best to kind of get to a point where we have to go back to normal life. And that's what I feel is going to be the future. And that's just an optimistic view rather than like a definition of any variety.
Well, I'm all over the optimism. If nothing else, there's a nice comment here from Nick Murphy. Says, for me, it's all about the human connection. Music really bringing people back together. And I think that'll be the theme for many of us for the rest of the year. I saw the clips. I wasn't lucky enough to be there. I know, George, you were at the event, for example. I saw some of the clips.
It certainly was.
Yeah, we don't know about the event, but I know when I saw the clips, I was like, "Gosh, is this what it's all going to be like when we get back?" And I meant that in a lovely way. Mark,
before you go on, I just wanted to say I've never seen a club be like a mosh pit for 8 hours. It was non-stop. It was crazy. So the release was really there. Sorry,
was that your?
It was literally like, after every single drop of each track, it was just a cheer. It wasn't like the one or two huge festival cheers that you get. It was the whole day. It was insane. It was insane.
What else, George? I was going to go on to Mark for a sec, but just while you're talking, what other reflections from being a punter there, rather than any other separate questions? You going there actually as a punter, as it were?
Yeah, I thought obviously one of the best things was the way you guys run it. It was so slick from start to finish. Even before you get in there and receiving all of the accreditation that you have to do. And it was just, simply the euphoria that was in that venue on that first day on the Friday. I didn't go on the Saturday, but it was probably one of the best clubbing experiences I've ever had. It was amazing.
And he's been to a lot. Mark,
been to a lot,
obviously, and tell us a little bit more, hopefully, within your answer about the role and about Broadwick and the events and the incredible venues that people wouldn't know. But during this time, again, I think it's understating. I mean, it's been pretty hard for you guys. I know, though, that you've also been looking at other ways that you can, frankly, still keep the momentum, still keep it going, still having a connection with audiences. Tell us a little bit about what you guys or how venues have frankly survived during this time, as well as perhaps reflecting on some of the hope that we've just been describing on back of Yousef's event.
Yeah, I think as a company we've always sort of operated our venues as sort of multi-use spaces. We've always sort of first and foremost found spaces that will work for the club experience, for live music, but there's always been a sort of side of what we do so that we can keep the venue operating through the week as well, and sort of that extra revenue that we would normally bring in on a normal operating year has been a bit of a lifeline for us whilst there has been no live music. So I think we've done quite a lot of interesting live streams. We had the Dua Lipa live stream, which she carried out, which was one of the most impressive things I think I've ever seen from a virtual event. We did New Year's Eve with you guys. We did a live broadcast from a pre-recorded broadcast from the venue with you guys. We did a essential mix with CamelPhat from the venue, and then we've had various things in there as well. I think the benefit that we get is because all our venues are quite large capacity. It's quite useful having huge warehouse space in London. It's still very much in demand for various reasons. If it's not music events, one key thing that we do in the venue quite a lot is film shoots. So we've done sort of we've had blockbuster movies in there. We've had music videos. We've had TV series. So that all sort of helps us keep on the lights. So I think that's one area we have been lucky in, but obviously having such vast spaces, there's a lot of overheads to manage as well. So I think if we didn't have stuff like the CRF grant to sit alongside what we've been bringing in additionally, we would be in a bad place as much as anyone else would be, really. It's always sort of been for us to just try and keep everything going as much as possible with what's available to us, really. And I think you've seen a lot of innovation across all of the music industry with people turning their hand to various things. One thing that we didn't do personally was any form of sort of branded live streams, but one of the main reasons for that is you guys came out the first week of lockdown with this amazing stream, and we were like, wow. We don't really want to do anything. We shared your stream through all our channels. We were like, these guys have nailed it. So I think we best just leave that alone. Yeah, exactly. A really hard act to follow.
But we're joking though, but when you're talking about converting a venue that is a warehouse space and allowing it to be like done for film shoots, what that also necessitates is you guys getting around a table, right, and talking about, look, we need to adapt, or we need to innovate, or we need to shift it. Was that an easy conversation to have early on? Because as you say, it's a financial imperative that you did, or were you kind of in those early days, what, a year-ish ago now, just over? Was it a more uncertain kind of moment of when we'd be back and holding your fire, as it were?
Yeah, it was I'm sure, as did everyone, when we first went into lockdown. I was looking through some emails in that period this week, and we're talking about reopening in 3 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time, and everyone's been pretty optimistic about it. And then there was a period that first probably 2 months where nothing really happened. Most people just did not leave their house at all. And we had calls with all our ops team, our bookings team, and sat down and said, well, what are we physically allowed to do? And then we started getting some very early inquiries, and then we were then having to sort of consult with the government advice lines on, are we allowed to do this? What can we physically do? Like what activity are you allowing? I think broadcast was classed as an essential service very early on. So we did start looking at, okay, if broadcast is an essential service, what people would be looking for spaces to broadcast from. We had initial conversations with that. And for us, it was very much, we'd all check in on a weekly basis and say, okay, do we have an update? Do we know what we can do? Is there anything that's been loosened off? Does anyone have any ideas? And it was just literally a round table, really, from everyone from our side, just sort of try to come up with creative ideas to keep the lights on.
Yeah, which I guess, as you say, was essential. And there's the comments, by the way, going on about Works is such an epic space. And I guess that's the point. There was a moment, wasn't there, where showcasing that space when it wasn't, frankly, full to the rafters in all its kind of beauty, which is full of people, was incredibly poignant, actually. And there was kind of quite a moment. You touched upon some of the help perhaps you received. Looking at the way the government handled things, full stop, I think we've all got various opinions on that. Be it for hospitality, certainly in this country, in the UK, where all of us are based here today. How could you do things differently if you were to find yourselves in a similar situation, in the future? Were there mistakes made? Was it the best that you could possibly have done, given the circumstances that frankly, we were dealt? What do you think now? Now we're sat here in May, just over a year on, as you say.
It's quite tricky, because I do feel that we have, as a business, benefited from some of the things that were put into place, but I feel that I think look, the furlough schemes allowed us to keep a lot of our staff on. The CRF fund has allowed us to cover ongoing costs that we had. But look, there was a lot of gaps that were left over. I think especially freelancers that worked for us, and people generally that work freelance in the music industry, but in a lot of other industries as well. The people that work in the gig economy, their tax returns don't necessarily reflect the information that the qualifying criteria for people to be able to claim anything. So I've got people that are close friends that have worked, but because of their work circumstances, say they were employed some of the time, they were freelance other times, they've not been able to claim anything, and they work in an industry that they've not been able to operate in. So I just think that hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I just feel like the government sort of ticked some very big boxes at the top and made sure that certain cultural institutions were covered, but didn't really consider the overall industry, and especially the overall music industry. Like, I feel like obviously the comments that Rishi Sunak made about retrain was just absolutely ridiculous, so ill-advised. Like, I couldn't believe the words were coming out of his mouth. Like, he was basically just saying, if you contribute to the UK economy in terms of culture, you are worthless now. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? I think everyone that's on this panel today and everyone that's listening in today, like, will agree with what I'm saying, that it was just so badly handled in that regard.
And you compare and contrast that to what I think was like a week ago, when in Germany they gave nightclubs that same status, cultural institution status as, say, museums. Do you think that might happen in other countries, for example? Should it happen? Is that a good thing? It feels good to me.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a great thing to happen. Will it happen in the UK? I massively doubt it. Would it happen in somewhere like Holland? Yes, I think so. I just think the UK government, and I think specifically that when it's a Conservative government, they just don't have a proper handle on what modern culture is. To them, it's theatre, it's fine art, it's ballet, it's opera. It's not what the amount of the base, like the majority of the population don't consume that culture. If you looked out and looked at the culture that the majority of this country consume, it is modern contemporary culture, be it music, be it film, whatever that is. That how they classify it is just so outdated, and it just needs to be relooked at, really. I know that we've had discussions, myself, Jos, Maria, I've had discussions with Michael Kill at NTIA about what can be done to sort of help educate and work with sort of the Arts Council, so they have a more of an understanding, especially about electronic music. But I think that there is such a huge education process to everyone in power to actually understand what the youth of today actually are interested in and why it's so culturally significant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would actually, maybe going off a bit pieced here, but I would actually say government have shown, they've missed their true colours. We've got cultural and economic value of our industry combined with live and with events and hospitality. It's the 5th biggest GDP in this country. And the reality is that is an industry worth fighting for. And yet, for whatever reason, the government did their absolute best to make it as difficult as possible. And all the conversations that are going on in we're calling it the Monday Club. I don't know how we've ended up with that.
I just said it one day.
It's actually working. Obviously, I've now joined the board of the NTIA, and we're all working. Yousef, I mean, one of the big things was we needed artists to step up, and Yousef absolutely has represented his community of artists in the best possible way. It's exactly what we needed to galvanise people power, people support for what we're trying to say about the value of our culture to the UK economy, not just economically, but also to people's mental health. Like, if you look at what's been consumed over lockdown, it was, I think, I can't remember the statistic, but I think 90% electronic music of people giving away free streams. People, remember when we were in deep lockdown each time, what were you listening to on a Friday night? It was definitely electronic music. Yeah. You were definitely tuning in and having a rave in your kitchen, weren't you?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're working on with the NTIA at the moment is we are actually putting together a report, and we're going into government, and we are basically representing electronic music for its value to culture, that, you know, it's a working class art form, it's not a middle class art form. I'm absolutely sure that the work that went in with all the campaigns, whether it's Save Nightlife or Let Us Dance, got us a bit more money from the CRF fund as well. But we also found out from doing all the CRF work that the Arts Council don't really understand our business. So they were giving out money to companies, might not necessarily, you know, that were very good at filling out forms, but they didn't really understand who they were giving the money to, because there's no one there that's, I don't know, paid to or interested in this phenomenal business that we have in the UK. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add about all of that.
Also, Maria, the CRF fund, 91% of it went to classical arts.
Yeah, I know.
91%.
That work that we did meant that we got a slightly bigger portion allocated to our genre, or sort of to a wide-reaching genre of music. We were so good. You know, one of the great things about us all is that we're so tenacious, such entrepreneurs, that we went for it, didn't we? We acted like we were trying to sell tickets for a rave. We're like, give us money, give us money. And actually, we are making inroads here. Michael is doing excellent work at NTIA. You know, the group that we're on, we're working really hard at the moment to get together a report. And we already know that they know this report's coming, and that the government are being asked, well, what did you give to electronic music? How do you support electronic music? They're asking these questions already, and they can't answer them. So we know we're making a difference to represent our culture and to future-proof it in as we move forward, if ever anything like this was to ever happen again.
Maria, your language I find very uniting. You use words like galvanize and mobilize.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be, though, going too far to suggest that, because frankly of the level of negativity, of frankly how badly things were dealt with, of perhaps the arrogance of government and all of that kind of stuff, I personally have always had a belief that from adversity comes great creativity. Do you think there is still a chance for that? I took a lot of positivity in what you've just said, which is ultimately, though, a very, mobilizing kind of speech of what needs to be done. Could it be that ultimately will lead to good things, to positivity, to fresh ideas, to fresh thinking?
I definitely think that a lot of us have realised that working together means that we're stronger. Together we are stronger. But I think...
For those who don't know in the audience, there's quite a lot watching around the world. Was that not the case before? Tell us about it. Was it a more divided...
No, we were in combat mode. We were like getting gigs, making money, doing, selling tickets, doing really good work, getting axe loads of work as an agent. We were just doing great business, great service to our artists. I'm speaking personally now, of course. And we were working as hard as we could to just, be as successful as we could. And I think it didn't allow for the level of cooperation that I've certainly seen in the last year amongst some really key people in the music industry. I think we're going to have a tough battle with government. I mean, we've certainly discovered that, they like listening to Coldplay or Elton John. And whilst there's nothing wrong with listening to those artists, I do myself sometimes. But, the reality is that there is a very... We've got a sort of people in power that are in their 60s, 50, late 50s, 60s and 70s. They don't really connect with what's going on the streets, in the warehouses, at club level, with kids making music in their bedrooms. They're not really connected with it. And I think we've all just trailblazed through, making money, not asking for any support, not really caring about, the acknowledgements of government. And I think, our business now, we need to recognise that actually dealing with whoever happens to be in power, whether you agree with their politics or not, I personally don't, but there you go, we won't go down that route. But the reality is that we need to have dialogue with the people that happen to be in power, because you asked earlier, would we do it differently? Well, if we were recognised or respected for the value to education, mental health, you know, economic, cultural value, we may have found that we would have got more support. Freelancers potentially may, I'm not saying 100%, there's 3 million of those people that didn't get any money at all, whilst there's 7 million people on a furlough scheme right now. So, you know, maybe they would have done it differently if they had a more understanding or more recognition of the value that we bring to the UK.
I also think,
Maria,
correct me if I'm wrong, but was it different territories? It was the different councils that gave those funds. So was it up to the individual councils who was giving the funds out?
The money that they allocated a ton of money. I can't remember the exact figure, probably like what, 140 million, and they gave it to the Arts Council to dish it out based on application forms. We do have a problem with running events and getting the whole ecosystem up and running again, whereas the UK government, when Boris is talking about what's going on with health and safety and test events, he really is only talking about England. He's not really talking about what's going on in Wales or Scotland. That's the slight difference with how that's working. Again, Yoss and I have discovered on all our calls that most government departments don't even speak to each other. We're getting different information from different departments. No, there's no communication. They're just wholly focused on a pandemic, and like, you know, you have to get their attention by, well, I think the best way is through social media pressure. They react. They have reacted over the last year to everything that our community has done to shine a light on what we needed to shine a light on. There's still quite a few more issues that we need to go through. And obviously you were very keen that we kept this positive today. So I won't be talking about insurance. But,
they simply don't know. The government simply don't know we exist, which is bananas. This time next year, they know. Well, they do, but like, I'm talking about that report that we're all working on. I can guarantee it's coming up then like a wrecking ball. Believe me.
Yeah, we've got fire in our bellies now, haven't we? We're determined to represent the music that we love, that we've all, you know, lived in as an ecosystem. We live and breathe this, and we've, you know, worked our way up from the ground up to this point of whatever level professionally people regard us to be at. But the reality is that we passionately care about this art form. We see its value. We see what it does to local communities. We see the footfall of value economically that it brings to regional towns when people go to a nightclub, go to a cafe afterwards, stay in a hotel, use a taxi. You know, the value of our scene to our local communities everywhere is huge, and we need to speak up now. It's time for us to start really representing the value of our scene to the government.
But your articulation of that is where I glean positivity from, and that's where I also hope that there are such fresh ideas. George,
hello.
Your position, and it's very global in the way that you are talking. You know, yes, nationwide, but in whether it be Ibiza or American tours or whatever. Give us a bit of reflection on that as well. Like, what is the overall feeling right now today? Are you frankly inundated with inquiries? Is it a bit concerned? How are you seeing it playing at the moment?
I feel like we're a little bit in no man's land, because nobody really does know, and everybody is planning so far ahead in advance, and it's super, super difficult because you need to then plan in advance because you need to be prepared for when this is all lifted. And you just don't know if you're doing it in vain. So it's a really, really difficult situation where you put in all of this resources in, you're booking it in, you're remaining hopeful, you need to act as if it's going ahead, but then are we going to find ourselves back in the same situation that we were when it first happened and have to undo all of that hard work? I really, really do hope not. I think the UK definitely stands the biggest chance for us within our world and with what we do. And yeah, like we are planning, like we're planning USA tours. We're planning Australia for 2022 early on. We're ready to go with Ibiza. So the whole of this season, Ibiza's booked, ready to go. But then it goes to the fact, like, we still don't know if it's 100% happening. So then, for example, there's a socially distanced event in the UK, which is 100% happening, and it challenges that day. I then have to do the right thing and let that date go. Like, I think that's more than fair. So we're finding ourselves in a bit of a predicament where we're losing talent on dates which might happen but might not, and then we also can't say no, you can't have that date, because then if it doesn't happen, who looks like the idiot? And I'm being unfair. So we're really in this Rubik's cube of, we don't know what's happening, but we are pretty much all prepared, because I've never worked so hard. It's ridiculous how much we've got ready.
Yeah,
it's bonkers at the moment.
It's nuts.
I think myself and George have had so many conversations where we're moving things around. We're not doing a certain artist because we might have to do them somewhere else. But then we're like, well, what happens if that show doesn't happen? We should put them onto this show. And honestly, we have like a call each week just speaking about things that might never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same. Also, go on, George. Sorry.
Also, we've like had the same shows being moved, and then the problem is the agents, the managers, us as promoters, we get bored of that show. It's like, right, okay, what do we do? Do we just do a clean slate? Let's cancel it all, and then until we know, or do we carry on? You never know, like, because it's potentially a year and a half, 2 years later, some of the talent might not be relevant to what we want now. For example, it's a really difficult situation.
Are there other elements, George, like that like, will we see an increase in smaller venues, smaller events, for example? Will it be different set times on DJs? Is it more locally sourced? Are there other kind of shifts that you're suspecting is about to happen?
Absolutely. I think like the local heroes are really going to strive, and the ones who have been really active within lockdown, i.e. in the studio, releasing music, remaining active on their social media, and they're the ones who are going to get booked for the clubs around their area because they're 100% going to be there. I really think it is time for the local heroes to climb the ranks and come up shining, which maybe they didn't get that opportunity before.
Maria, tell us a little bit more about that. We've talked about, be it Mark, when we're talking about the venues and when they're not used, George's current perspective, the feeling that Yousef described. Tell us a little bit more about, well, frankly, the people at the heart of it, the artists, the DJs. What's been going on in this time for some of the audience? Again, it's a global audience, some of them quite young here on Twitch, big fans of individual artists. What's it been like for them? Half of them frankly earn money doing entirely different stuff. What's it going to mean for artist fees going forward? Give us a bit of perspective on that.
Okay, well, I mean, I think for the artists that are, are like super established, I think they've been weathering this storm to some degree, and they've been quietly in the studio making music. And I've got clients like David Guetta that has been doing United We Stream events where he's like raised millions for charity and really shone a light on like the production values of what you can do with electronic music at like amazing venues around the world. So it's been really exciting. I've got other artists that have been doing loads of streaming from their kitchens. We all know who I'm talking about, and have done really well with that in the UK. And but I do see a lot of the younger mid-tier artists who are really struggling financially. Like it's been the hardest year ever. I remember like when the round 2 of the CRF funding, I was helping, and so many artists, surprising number of artists and surprising caliber of artists to get some CRF funding to keep them going with their labels and stuff, because it literally was the only option for them to keep going, because there literally has been no money of any real value since last March. Like it literally has been no shows, no money. I mean, I think the acts that are able to have hits over lockdown, and we've seen quite a lot of my artists having some really strong records on radio, and so there are obviously streaming opportunities, and there has been private streams, and there has been a few pay-per-view scenarios going on, but it's not been enough to sustain a career or a business. It's not like, that's not enough to keep wolves from the door. That's like one-off opportunities here, there and everywhere. I mean, certainly all my DJs didn't play any play graves or go and risk the local communities by playing or encouraging people to, go into areas. So that, pretty much my roster has been off for a year. What was the next bit of the question? Sorry, because I felt like I was going off on a tangent then.
There was actually a lot of love for Got One. I think people saw through the lines when you started talking about pitching disc. There was also Fox always got a huge amount of supporters. Wherever stream or any conversation, there's always a lot of Got One love.
He's absolutely adorable.
There was also, and he's been smashing it during this time. And I think something you've just said, which we found interesting, was a lot of the, let's say, perhaps older, but certainly established, brilliant professional acts are arguably the ones who work the hardest. I don't know if you found that, but from a sense that you've seen is that they've been grafting and putting their time in and innovating.
And also providing work for people. You know, like every time we do something with David, it takes a full crew of 12 people. And yes, we've jumped through hoops in order to get them into these countries, allow them to fly, but it's actually created work for them, you know. So we were like, thinking about that all the time in the safest possible way, no crowd, no people doing these live sort of streams and stuff. So, I think in terms of what's happening in Europe right now, which is quite interesting, as George was saying, I mean, we are literally like walking in glue at the moment. It's like limbo of the highest order. September, everything's moved into September, all the festivals. I know there's some shows in the summer in Croatia and stuff that are still up. But in the most part, I've literally got some of the major artists, 4 festivals on hold. And if that one gets cancelled, then we can put you on there. And I've never had it. It's like 1992 again. Like where we've got like multiple shows, but the reality is most of them won't happen. No. So like we're all holding out for the governments to say something. We definitely are in Ibiza. That's what everyone's waiting for the governments to say something. Maybe August, maybe. I don't think July is an option now. Maybe, who knows? We're certainly seeing in the last 2 weeks. I think we've probably had about 20 festivals cancel or rescheduled to next year from the July period. So I do feel like July is looking less and less likely. I mean, I think there's a few still stuck in there, isn't there? There's the one in Romania, and then there's obviously Exit Festival saying that they're still running. Very much looking forward to that. But apart from that, there's very few things.
Tying in a couple of parts, there's so many interesting bits you've just said.
Yeah.
Simon Marlin from Shapeshifters is in the stream, and he was agreeing with what you just said and saying we've all had to adapt. There was a really interesting comment from a Paula Samford who actually says, people like myself, I've got autism, I actually don't go to venues. I have this option though now of watching live streams, and it's opened up an entirely new world. Maria, how do you relate that? And I want to get a bit more into that, because I want to know if from all of you, if that's frankly going to continue, if there is this hybrid model, or if it's dead when we're
do you know what? I have absolutely no problem on a sold out show if the promoter wants to live stream it to an audience who can't be there, whether it because the event sells out every year, like a Primavera. You can never get a ticket for that. You can never get a guest list for that. So like, why not live stream the main stage show and potentially pay for view on a lower ticket price to people? I don't think on certain events it's going to affect the tickets that we sell. I also think for someone who has learning difficulties, there's a lot of people that are excluded, not because we don't want them there, but by virtue of it's not a right environment for them to be in. Disabled people have real issues with access at certain venues. They shouldn't, but they do. And then obviously people with kids, young children, can't go out as much as they would. So why on earth wouldn't you have this situation where we open up this ability to watch these shows from home at a cheaper ticket price? The issues I have with it are the quality of it, but also we're seeing some major operators now adding pay for view into their terms and conditions. So as in the past where you always get those, you have to give your streaming, radio, broadcast, now pay for views in there. So one of the big things that I'm fighting for is like, excuse me, that's income for performance. What share is the artist getting? Obviously, maybe our audience, not interested in these conversations, but the reality is like, we're seeing like when streaming first came in, everybody rushed to it. They wanted to be part of it back in the day. And the deals that were done set a precedent that were pretty unfair to artists. So I think it's really important as an industry now, we look at how we do this, how we break this new income streaming, this new sign of the income stream in, and work out what's the fairest way to break this down so everybody gets a share of it. Otherwise, we're going to have some real issues with acts who are saying, I'm not going to do that festival unless you give me some money. And I think once again, the headliners are going to get away with this, but the mid or lower tier artists are going to be like, well, I really want to play that festival. Okay, I'm going to accept this.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair. So I think it's another thing that I'm discussing amongst our industry to try and come up with, or try and encourage people to look at this. And, you know, in the rock and roll world, it's really interesting. They're like, they don't, in the majority, don't see how streaming or pay-per-view is the way forward. But I feel like you're seeing in theatres at the moment a real innovative approach to technology in theatres with VR and AR, and then streaming, and how it's opening up theatre to a wider audience for all the reasons that we've discussed. And I really feel like, I feel like that this is definitely a new income stream, and definitely to open up access to people that might not necessarily be able to go to the show for whatever reason.
Maria, you say far too many good things. I've written about 28 points that I now want to pick up from. We're never going to have the time. There's also a million comments coming in. Your last 5 minutes has definitely been the most engaged so far. People like Shakes actually as well said there's a whole bunch of new people and audience who he's not going to forget now, who basically come in as a consequence of the streams, which is nice. George, just something that, again, Maria said I'd love you to reflect on. The notion of accessibility. When you're putting on a show, and it might be with like Mark and 5,000-ish, you know, Cat, which is amazing kind of venue. All of a sudden, during the virtual events, which we all know aren't the goosebumps, they're not the sweat pouring on you, but they are bringing people together, you're suddenly reaching 2 million. That's quite humbling, right? And I suspect for you, when you were first putting on one, was that eye-opening? Was that surprising?
It was mad. I think, obviously, because it was yourself, me, Wes, Simon, and Tom and crew, we all just jumped on the WhatsApp and we were like, right, what do we do? How can we reach people to spread positivity? And it really was like the first few we did, it was so much hype. Like, I was getting friends from around the world messaging saying, I've set up a Zoom with all my friends and we've all got our glitter on, because it was a glitter box live stream, and they were having parties in their lounge on their own, but with their mates, when Zoom wasn't really like a thing back then. Like, it was insane. And also, Maria, back to your point as well, I think you're completely correct. I think it's a really good pay-per-view is a really good opportunity, one for revenue, but also for people who can't make it. And I think if we take the same route how sports mastered pay-per-view in a fair way, I think that will be definitely the direction that and the business model we should take.
We've kind of already got it set up for Circus with a company. We've kind of already got it set up for Circus. We trialed it sort of in the first dance on the first day, but what we took advice upon was people, when it comes to live streams, they only watch a small percentage of it start to finish, like a really small percentage of it, less than 10. But for audio streams, it's like high 90s or it's in 90s. So in terms of having the engagement with what is actually happening, listening audio wise, that's the way we're going to go with it, with things. And in terms of splitting the economics of it out, excuse me, I think it really depends on how many artists are there. But my kind of maybe romantic viewpoint is it's split evenly across all the artists and a portion goes to a certain charity.
Really simple. Let's come up with a model that's fair. Basically all I'm saying. Agreed. Rather than the Live Nations of the world just basically taking that income and adding it into their parent costings when they've already got all the kit there anyway, and they're just filming the bands and like broadcasting it. Like this conversation needs to be had. I also want to say thank you to Defected. Like, it was one thing that saved me in lockdown. Like, it was just like the event of the weekend. It was pretty awesome. It really was. It really was.
I need to quickly read you out some more comments because it's very, very lively. It's really lovely. Lex Matt was agreeing with what George says, looking at the sports space, saying, look, POV works. We're ready for it. We show it in sports, so why not elsewhere? I also love the fact that, Maria, you're plucking out things like theatre. George, you're talking about stuff like sports. I think we are nothing but open to borrowing from other industries as the best future for our own, which is a great shout. Junkie27, one of my favourite comments of the day, Maria is pushing thought and I love it. I'm not even sure exactly what that means, but I love it too. Marissa says, yes, George, those live streams were amazing. And that was kind of concurred by Paula Sanford, who was like, I still got those goosebumps watching live streams. My personal perspective there is, Maria, exactly as you're articulating, there must be a middle ground where we can get accessibility for all, wherever you are in the world, where you can tune in Australia to Yousef's next incredible event. Maybe you're not there, but maybe you are still feeling a part of it, and maybe there is a commercial realization to make that worthwhile, you know, but accessible for everyone.
I mean, I do think that's nice to, when you have these sweaty clubs that they're not filmed, and we all remember the days we used to go into space and they used to take your cameras off you before mobile phones, and that's why the memory of space and Studio 54 are that they were amazing, because there's no video footage or pictures of, well, real pictures of what actually went on in them. So, but I do feel like for sold out events that people can't get tickets for, and there is demand, then we could open it up for those fans that want to take part that can't actually be there in person. And also the whole VR AR thing, you know, the sports model is that you're going to be able to, and people in music are going to freak out, but wear a headset and buy front row seats to a basketball match, and it's going to be exactly like you're there. Now, listen, whilst I'm not taking away the actual real experience and like I'm killing the vibe here, there are going to be some people, gamers especially, that are going to have no problem with doing that and being part of an event in that way, in their living room, in their socks. But they're still going to have a good time. So why would we knock that? Like,
Thank
you know,
I do think, especially the younger generation engages with technology a bit more as well. So where it might be people of our generation won't engage as much with VR and AR, they're sort of growing up with that technology being there. So when they do hit the age of getting really into going out, listening to music, I think they're going to sort of embrace that technology as the technology grows itself as well.
Yeah.
So there will be a point in 10 years time where you will be able to put a headset on and you are literally in a crystal clear environment, exactly as if you were there. And it'll be a great experience. It'll be a different experience, but it'll still be a great experience.
Mark, are you actively pursuing, because it feels almost like paradoxical that you are quite literally, you know, the bastion of these unbelievable places, these incredible iconic venues are under your sort of ownership. But are you exploring stuff like that to better show them? Is that a near future for you guys?
It's something that we've looked into, and we feel sort of when the technology is right, we will embrace it. I was part of the founding team of a music virtual reality company called Melody VR. I was there for 3 years. We formed in 2014, and when we were having those conversations back then, 6-7 years ago, people thought we were crazy. That we would go in and sit in with the record labels, sit in with artist managers, and they were just like, what? You want to do a concert in virtual reality? What even is virtual reality? Like, everyone just like harked back to films like The Lawnmower Man and that sort of 1980s VR, and obviously the tech has moved so much further than that. So I think we're definitely at a crossroads now where maybe not straight away, but 3-5 years time from now, the technology will be like at the level where people will embrace it a lot more. And I think, look, contradicting myself as well, one of the themes that we've done for when we reopen Printworks, the opening weekend of Printworks, we've called Redacted, and we are taking away all content from the venue. We're going to seal people's phones in sort of little wallets as they arrive there. Media are allowed on site, but they can only have written reviews. They're not allowed to take any photos.
Wicked.
None of the artists know who else is playing until that person gets on stage.
Yeah, wicked.
I like that.
That's good.
I mean,
So
you know, go on. I was just going to say, go on. You say, go on.
Sorry. So the idea behind that was like, look, if you've not been in the club environment for 15 months by the time we reopen, like, let's just strip away everything else to do with sort of like the outside world and just go in there and just embrace the event itself and just lose yourself.
Well, I'll come. That sounds amazing. I love all that stuff.
Absolutely.
I also want to say there is a point where sometimes doing a free stream, as we've all seen with, you know, Isolation Nation, Defected, you know, whatever it is, actually you get a bigger audience. So managing, you know, and so for an artist, if you're looking for a promotional moment, is it better to do a free stream and play in front of 3 million people, or do a pay-per-view one where it's, you know, whatever the numbers are? So I don't know.
George, tell us a bit more about that from your, again, you could be personal perspective as much as a Defected perspective. I know you and I were literally in a conversation only this morning whereby it was a physical event or a couple of them, and it was almost a given that we would concurrently stream at least some of it or part of it. Is that part of your conversations, or is that quite novel, or are most people are like, look, don't worry about the virtual thing now, we're back in the game? Where's the appetite at the moment?
Well, it's definitely to get live back up and running. And like me personally, I'd happily get rid of virtual if it was going to stop live, for example. It wouldn't be an issue. But I do think being able to offer it, and the biggest hurdle that you come across, I was speaking to James Sutcliffe from Live Now yesterday, and the biggest hurdle that he's coming across for the live streaming is artists aren't comfortable with them being filmed. So mistakes happen, DJs do make mistakes, etc., and you will be absolutely slated if you're on a live stream and that happens. So obviously it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And I think that is an issue. And I think if there is going to be pay-per-view, I think you'll want to watch the whole event, and getting every single artist and every single set time to confirm will be super, super difficult. And it's just an extra added layer of stress. But I do think it will become more normal. It's kind of like the VR thing. Like, I'm quite pro. It's at the minute it feels like a bit of a gimmick, but every household will have a VR set in 10, 15 years time. Like, I do believe in that.
I mean, I guess I agree entirely with, I think it was Mark who was mentioning the age range. At the end of the day, if you are of a certain age who's grown up used to open world gaming formats, then it's a given that you might go into Fortnite and watch Travis Scott, or it's a given that you be in Minecraft, because that's simply a space and a place where you spend time. For many of us, that might feel alien and novelty, but for others, it's like, well, no, that's a part of my day. Of course, I can then consume a pretty amazingly produced piece of music in that environment.
Yeah, I think it was also like, what is the demand going to be? So, like, for example, I think it was the Dua Lipa one, Mark at Printworks sold 5 million tickets to watch her, like, which is insane. And that is obviously an insane amount of money that's coming in.
And a global audience as well. It wasn't just like, it was global, which is an interesting thing as well. Yeah.
So then it's like, is that appetite going to be there? So most events on a Friday, Saturday, right? So are people going to be at home, or are they going to be at the pub? It's like, who is going to watch these streams and how many people, and is it worth it? I suppose you've got to get your morals right and why you're doing the live stream. If it's for the community, 100%. If it's purely just for the money, probably not.
Tell us more about that appetite, because, you know, Yousef's event sold out. What was it, Yousef? In a matter of minutes, certainly, wasn't it?
Well, well, the Saturday one sold out instantly, pretty much, and the Friday one did eventually. It was a lot slower than we expected, to be perfectly honest. But
and Yousef and George, how do you see that now panning out? George, you did the same with the Drum Sheds Defected event that sold out as swift as anything probably you've ever done. Both of you, is that going to maintain this year, or are you thinking, come on, that's impossible?
We could only wish. I think the appetite. I think lots of people are just desperate to go out, and people were scrambling to announce because lots of people want to make plans. They want to have that hope in their calendar. Right, I'm going to this event. And Mark and I, we were discussing. We're like, right, cool, let's get this on sale. And I think we turned it around pretty quickly, and it sold out in, I think, 2 hours with just the brands, which was amazing. But I don't think that will always happen. Like, I think
I would say where we've already seen a little bit of a lull in ticket sales recently, because we've probably put 30-40 shows out in the past 2 to 3 months, and I feel like there's just a little bit of buyer's fatigue at the minute, because people have bought tickets for events that are 2, 3, 4 months away from now. They're now able to go out with their friends and go to the pub and start sort of getting that social interaction back again. I think until it gets to June the 21st and there's been nothing stopping the shows going ahead as planned, I feel like we're probably in only a short period, probably another 3 to 5 weeks, where people are like, I'm not going to buy any more tickets. I'm just going to go out, enjoy myself. When this becomes a reality, then I think tickets will start selling again.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely customer fatigue. Like, some of the things that we put out originally sold out in, I mean, literally minutes, you know. A lot of the things were put on sale to the end of the year. I've kind of gone too. And I don't know if you know, but I own half a shindig in Newcastle as well. And we put a Marco Crawler gig up and it sold out in 8 minutes, less than 8 minutes, you know, so the excitement is there. But again, I think the appetite for the rave is enormous. It's the biggest it's ever been, because, you know, it's a global conversation for everybody now. Especially, well, I'm not saying because of, but because of the first dance really appealed to non-ravers. It's also kind of the conversation is so wide at the moment, you know, like grannies and Outer Hebrides talking about raving in Liverpool and stuff, and it's only a good thing that's going to have a positive impact on us all over time.
There was a comment in the chat. Someone called James Kent was provocatively asking why the event, and they were contrasting with the virtual, i.e., is 6 hours in a club really better than perhaps the spectacle that you could create and produce from a virtual event? Someone replied simply, you go to fill the base. But Diane, is that something we are all already talking there about accessibility, about the potential of hybrid, about buying a ticket for an event that's ostensibly in London if you're in Australia? But is it impossible to get close to that feeling of the goosebumps and sweat and frankly feeling that bass going through your system? Is that still...
Get a really good speaker.
It's more than that. It's much more than that. The whole point of, for me, I'm almost kind of addicted to the acid house ethos of going to a party, meeting strangers, having a good time, making connections, building up a kind of wider community of friends. There's no reason why you can't do that in the virtual world as well in some ways, but I don't think it's replaceable. But I do agree that it can run in parallel in some ways at some point.
I think it was you, Yousef, or it might have been you, or I'm sure it was yourself, but there was a conversation a few months back when we were all desperately rallying and perhaps fighting and mobilizing in the way that Maria so well articulated earlier what was going on, certainly in the UK. And people were pointing out, this isn't just some venue, there's some vacuous venue and some music playing. This is the place you meet your future husband or your wife, or that you married your best mate, or this is a place where memories are created. It's very human, right? And I guess that's where it becomes difficult to ever replace, or would never.
Absolutely. And, you know, another thing what I've been saying to these MPs I've been speaking to over the past 9 months is like, look, acid house and the rave culture, it's almost like 30 years ahead of the curve socially, because that general ethos of, you know, it's irrelevant where you're from, what you look like, your skin color, your persuasion, any of those things are just not a concern overall, you know. And this is all becoming like a standardized conversation now of kind of inclusivity. So we've been doing this for 30 years, like literally, and I'm sure it happened more prior to other generations, but for us, or for me at least, this is where it all stems from.
Funny way,
so,
it feels like
it's important to nurture it.
It feels like it's never been more needed to have that level of all accessibility, everyone welcome, that feels, you say, feels natural, which comes out of stuff like rave culture and acid house. And yet we've just gone through just over a year, and things like online trolling and online hate has actually never been at a worse state of affairs, and it permeates from music to football to celebrity. It feels like it's never been more important that could be back together, right?
It's kind of like the 360 though. So it's like, obviously with our business model, it all starts with the music, and we release so much music and people want to experience that live. So they've listened to that music, they fall in love with the tunes and the artist on Spotify, and they need to go and experience that live. And I don't think there is anything else will be able to replace that.
There's that Honey Dijon quote, dance floors unite people in a way that governments and religions never could, which I think
absolutely
is incredibly apt for that. Maria, I got slightly sidetracked, but I just wanted to carry on a bit. When you were talking about the artists and the DJs and the state of play, you were talking very much about a middle crew, if you like, perhaps not the ones who've made it or the ones who are up and coming, but who have frankly struggled. In your role, because again, we've got a lot of young people here who are looking to do jobs like you've got, this incredible role at a place like CAA. How do you counsel people through that? What are you couching them? What are you saying to them to get them through these pretty tricky times? And how have you managed that in terms of managing people?
Well, obviously you need to find funding for them to survive. So obviously looking at where, you know, additional income, if there is any available for them, you know, I mean, obviously they have managers as well, but, you know, looking at if there is streaming income, or, you know, we can get help them with the CRF funding or whatever it may be. But ultimately, I'm really excited because most of my acts have been in the studio solely for the last, you know, year and a half. And some of my bigger acts have written their biggest records when they've had time off. And the music that I'm hearing at the moment from most of my clients is massive. So I think, you know, in a way, as an industry, I do keep thinking that maybe we needed a little bit of a break for everybody to get their health back together. I mean, I was knackered. I mean, and I do feel like we were in such a rush to keep going that to some degree you could see it reflected in the commerciality of everything that was going on, that we'd kind of maybe not got, well, I think generally a little bit less creative than we used to be, or having the time and the moment to sort of write better music. Oh, that sounds terrible thing to say. All these acts around me are going, I write great music. But sorry to all my clients. No, I didn't mean that. No, but the point is, it's like, I actually think I'm just digging a really big hole for myself right now.
It's getting bigger.
We can cut this later.
I understand what you said.
So if you've got the time and you're rested and you're not pushing yourself with lack of sleep, or, you know, drinking and alcohol and all the stuff that goes with it, and just pushing yourself to just get to that next show and doing this and moving on and running this party, you know, like, you're making music from the heart, really. And again, and you're thinking about the music differently, potentially, like making it because you love it rather than because you think it might be a hit. And the point is, when you make stuff that you love, if it's a hit as well, it's a double whammy bonus, isn't it? That it's an amazing, heartfelt, soulful record that connects with people lyrically. I'm a lyric girl, sod the bass line, but I love the lyrics. But, you know, like, you've got time to write records where the lyrics actually connect with people as well, you know. And I think I'm starting to see now some really great music. I don't know about you guys. I'm starting to hear some really great music. I'm really excited about what's to come musically. Yeah.
Comment from Caper official saying Maria May is saying everything I'm thinking. Mr. James Kent says Maria for Prime Minister. Lex either Maria has planted an awful lot of people in this chat, or you're engaging them. Yousef, you concurring. There was also a lovely comment about the brilliance of the music the Circus has been putting out through the time. But as a man who actually produces and makes, do you agree? Is that on the money?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I couldn't agree more. I always make music from the gut anyway, but more so this year, you know, rather than kind of getting lost in, okay, is this going to be a banger? Is this going to connect? Just slow down and make music that's really important to you. And then the way I see things is, you know, when all is dust, it's going to be you and your music, and you need to be able to look it in the eye and be proud of it, you know. So that's something that I like to do. But this year, more than ever, I think I've made probably the best music of my career in the last 12 months. A lot of it isn't released yet, but it's coming, and it's, you know, and it's significant even from my point of view. So it feels positive for the future for me. And I think, you know, a lot of people have had the same time to, like you say, connect with more with
sleep,
the label.
Get some sleep.
Yeah, but with my artists that are on the Circus label, I've tried to kind of slow them down and say, look, guys, you know, get a better mix down. Don't be afraid to work with musicians. Here is a list of singer-songwriters. Push your own kind of boundaries. I don't want another kind of tech house functional track that I'm going to forget about in 10 minutes. I always say to them, send me a record I'm going to remember in 20 years, or don't. Well, that's kind of the idea.
You started off, and unbelievably, guys, we're nearly out of time. It feels like that was about 15, but we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to go to some more questions in a minute. But you started off nearly an hour and a half ago, Yousef, and you said something about, you know, a record that was effectively 10 years in the record box, and you found the moment. Tell us more with what you've just said in mind of what's next in terms of, do you think it's going to alter musically what gets played? I wasn't lucky enough to be at your amazing event the other week, but was it more nostalgic? Was it more melodic? Or was it basically as it would always have been, other than the records that you were playing, perhaps?
It felt more emotional. Everyone was playing records that were more connective. Like you say, maybe more songs, maybe more strings, maybe more power. It did surprisingly need, as a DJ point of view, need more moments, because the energy in the room, people wanted to kind of release. But for me, I made sure that everything I play gave me the shivers in terms of, and it had high energy, and everything kind of had a point to it. And I see music in colours. You see, I've got like synesthesia, so everything was kind of red and pink and purple, and that's the way I viewed that set that I played that night.
I love
a big green.
I love the fact that you're thinking through colours. A good question from James Kent says, have you had to explore, or are you exploring new genres because of the lack of club that's been happening until now? Has that effectively forced your hand?
Yeah, well, purposefully, I see what was coming quite quickly, and I said to my artists, look, we need kind of more song-based things, more kind of Spotify length edits, less club tools, and importantly, a different style of mixdown, more kind of dynamic range. The vocals maybe half a dB louder, slightly more space in the music, but still what you do. But why didn't you try to kind of aim at Spotify as well? Because there's no clubs. Build up your catalog, maybe your numbers, and then let's see what happens after it. And I've kept that viewpoint all the way through this, and I'm gonna stick to it. So like I say, every record gets a really pro mixdown, gets a proper push. It gets given an opportunity, whether you're I don't know, Carl Cox or Green Velvet or someone I've just found on Spotify or on SoundCloud, which is the way it goes for me. But
George,
yeah.
I know, with what Yousef's just said, and I know ultimately tickets need to be sold, venues need to be full, but is there an opportunity for people like yourself there to be booking newer talent, fresher talent, younger talent perhaps, to be more creative with lineups, marrying perhaps the venues? What's the outlook?
100%. I think some people have really shone, and I can't mention who, but we've just signed some new really exciting talent to the agency who maybe before we wouldn't have even considered, but we can just see how quickly and how good people are with their production, with their social media, how quickly they can grow. And I feel like the industry, I think, has taken a little bit of a different approach and really helping the lower level talent to really shine at the rate that they deserve. And that's what we've definitely been doing during lockdown as well, trying to find some new talent, which a lot of exciting stuff's coming soon.
We've got 8 minutes left before this brilliant chat segues into a live Sondela radio show, which is going to be very different, with Seth Combo, the My Ugly Face, chatting away. With that in mind, and there's been, again, loads more action to what you've just been saying. There's been a lot of love from Naughty Noodles on Jess Bays. There's been a lot of agreement, George, with what you were just saying. I'm going to go around all of you now and just talk a little bit over the next few minutes about how you see things now, hopefully with a more positive hat on, or perhaps, realistically enthused at least. Mark, we've quite literally got events in the calendar. Is everything looking a bit brighter, and how are you going to see the rest of 21 now panning out for you guys at Broadwick?
We've got so many events coming up. Our first show is actually the Defected London show with yourselves at the end of July. So fingers crossed for that one. That'll be the first thing that we'll kick off. I believe it's sort of your first show as well. So I think that's the one that we're the most excited for, but also the most nervous for, because obviously it's only 9 weeks away and we've still not got the proper guidance. But when it happens, if it happens, it'll be amazing, because it'll be the first chance of everyone being back out in the field again. Everyone seeing everyone that they've not seen properly for the past 15, 16 months. And once that first show happens, I can feel the excitement building up in myself just discussing it, really. We've got shows pretty much every weekend from that weekend until New Year's Day. And actually, coincidentally, New Year's Day is with you guys as well.
This is a coincidence. It looks massively staged. That is a coincidence.
It is.
We've got nothing to worry about because Yousef's given us all the answers, right? He's told us how to do it. So, it can't be that hard. George, bear in mind what Mark just said, are you sharing that level of optimism? I know we've also got some concerns, if you like, almost the domino effect of where we're at and the walking through glue kind of, I think, metaphor that Maria used.
I think it's one of those things where you've just got to take that risk, go against the grain a little bit, as I feel we always have done as a business, and we just need to remain hopeful and adapt as and when we need to, as and when we know. I'm super excited. I'm going down to the drum sheds on Tuesday for a site visit. It feels like we're slowly getting there. Well, if it happens, fingers crossed. None of us actually know. But yeah, we're remaining hopeful that it is.
Maria, tell us, because you're involved in so much, which is so, I think, in a lovely structured way, trying to progress and get us frankly all out of this. What's literally next for you in that sense? And then tell us about how this year perhaps could end up in a more hopeful way.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the moment where the government starts viewing this as an endemic rather than a pandemic. And I think we've got to hope that from 17th of May, the next step rolls out smoothly and the vaccine rollout continues, whether you agree or not agree. That is basically the only way that we're going to get shows up and running, as they keep pushing the vaccines, and the vaccines are actually and the government's ability to manage the variants that we're hearing about in the next few days. And we're just going to have to see what happens. We've still got some challenges ahead of us with the government to get some insurance for cancellation. That may stop a few events, large events happening in July. The CRF funding, there are some issues with that at the moment, with just complex people still not being paid from their CRF funding. I am really hopeful that we will see shows in the UK at the end of August and in September, and I'm really, really looking forward to them. I just want to be able to book a summer and know it's happening. Yeah. And I feel confident that next summer is going to be amazing. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to all the new music that's coming and the emergence of young talent. You know, we've been talking about, supporting younger artists. One of the things that we lacked in our scene pre-pandemic was we had too many headliners and not enough mid and lower tier acts that were of value to the audiences. And I think, we talk about future-proofing. Let's future-proof with talent right across the board.
I think so many people will love the fact that, you, Maria May, and all your experience in at CAA are saying that. I think that will mean an awful lot to an awful lot of people. Yousef, we started this conversation with you. I am going to go to a couple of audience questions in a sec for everyone. But my final point, or rather my final question to you on that last day, you've just experienced the most ludicrous level of positivity, absolutely warranted, by the way, every last bit of it. And as we talked about, have been so global in the press that came out of it, it got to 7 billion people. What on earth comes next, Yousef?
Well, I am just trying to be as patient as you guys to see what the story is. I mean, the roundup or the debrief of what happened is the conversation is happening simultaneously to this. I should have been on that, but we're on this. So Rich is going to tell me what the story is in terms of the data that came from those events, which is going to feed straight into central government to be able to kind of give us a clearer picture on June the 21st. I am, like I say, hopeful that June the 21st comes without any sort of resistance, and we can just get back to business. And maybe that is very rose-tinted specs. Maybe I'm still high from the excitement of the previous few weeks, but I do feel, like Maria said, that the vaccine rollout, as much as I'm no supporter of this government whatsoever, and certainly no supporter of Brexit, but the one thing that they seem to have organised well is this vaccine rollout, and I think that's going to have a necessary effect positively to be able to kind of get us back, not just electronic music events, but all kind of social events back to some normality soon.
I think it's very well said. A couple more comments that I just wanted to read out. They're going so fast up the screen, I'm having to write them down. That's why I'm scribbling. There's a lovely comment about what a positive chat it is. There was a Maria fan, which simply says, whoever works for or works with Maria May is incredibly lucky. Which, again, it's like we've got the Maria May fan club in today, which I really like.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I assume this is just an elaborate recruitment drive, Maria, which is super impressive. And I've got a few questions, but we've got only a minute, so this might be the last. Is that one last question, then, Yousef, I'm going to give you, mate. Any feedback from the government on the Liverpool event? We've told all the feedback from all of us. Everyone's glowing. What's the actual government feedback? Let's see on that.
Like I say, the conversation is happening right now. That I was meant to be on that call, the 4:30 call. So I will be able to give you that feedback as soon as I go off this call.
Okay.
As far as I understand, leading into the event, out of the 6,500 people that the government tested locally, there was only 1 or 2 that were positive coming in, which meant their ticket was voided. So take from that what you will, and hopefully, this is going to be, it was an essential step to June 21st.
I mean, Melvin, I was just on a call with Melvin, and before this, Melvin Ben from Festival Republic, he said on the panel that he was absolutely confident that events end of August, large festivals would be taking place in the UK. So on that note.
That's a good note, isn't it? Well,
let's hope so.
It's almost before George didn't walk out, his laptop died. You all know you're live on Twitch and someone literally disappears. Mark Newton, Yousef, Maria May, and your massive new fan club. Thank you so much, all of you, the time for giving up government conversations to join our little conversation. It's been really, really valuable, super positive. We're going to be putting it back up on other platforms too in a couple of days' time so people can watch again. I know there's a lot to learn from. Thank you so much for your time. If you've been watching in the audience, thank you very much for your comments and your engagement and your love for Maria May. Now we are going to segue almost seamlessly in a Twitch-like live way over to Seth Combo, who's going to be playing a live Sondela radio show. Everyone, thank you very much indeed.